high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Talking Catholic. I'm Jen Morrow, and with me, as always, is Mike Walsh.
What's going on, Jen?
Nothing. What's going on with you?
First of all, that is completely untrue.
Totally not true.
We're here. We're actually not in the vault. We're not in the office. We're recording for the first time ever in Bridgeton, New Jersey. But you need to ask me a ton of questions about Man Up South Jersey.
The Man Up South Jersey was on November 11th,
That's
correct?
Right.
Veterans Day.
This past weekend, right?
At Paul VI in Haddonfield.
That's right.
So you were there all day?
I was there all day. It was because it was the first time that Man Up South Jersey's Men's Spirituality Conference had ever been held on Veterans Day. It was veterans themed from beginning to end. As a matter of fact, a couple of our guests made an appearance as part of the color guard while we were there, and it was really impressive. The speakers, it was a great slate of speakers. Bishop Sullivan was there, as he always is, and he did a great job. The Irish tenor Mark Forrest was there. His adorations are always really impressive. But they also had Major General Carl H. Gingrich, who is the Director of Program Analysis and Evaluation for the U.S. Army Deputy Chief of Staff. He was also followed by Captain Daniel Mode, who's the chaplain of the U.S. Coast Guard. Then we had a little non-military there. We also had Deacon Harold Burke Sivers, who's a very well-known Catholic presenter. Mm-hmm. But I think it's like the fifth. I can't remember if it was the fourth or fifth. There was a couple of canceled ones because of COVID. But fourth. Okay. Yeah. It was. I've been to every single one of them, and I got to say, this was their biggest crowd that they've ever had there, which is really nice. The guys that came were really invested. There were more sponsors than I'd ever seen there before, a ton of exhibitors. There were more priests than I'd ever seen there. I mean, at a men's spirituality conference, you may not think about this, but, confession is offered. There was standing room only. I mean, a line that went from the beginning of the PVI auditorium or gymnasium to the end of the PVI gymnasium.
Oh, that's beautiful.
All of dudes waiting to go for confession. It was great. It was really so sweet. It really was.
It was beautiful. Dudes waiting for confession.
Hey, listen. It's when you go on a Saturday to most churches, you'll, as many of the priests have told me, it's usually little old ladies telling their bringing their heart out in the confessional, but it's not usually a ton of guys. And having an opportunity like that's really opening a door to them. And I have to tell you, Deacon Silvers did a great job of encouraging men to go to confession and why you need to go to confession and not all the benefits you'll receive from going to confession. It was really, I have to say, it was really impressive. Did I go to confession? No, I did not. But the line of people that went to I have to give a lot of credit. Our colleague, Pete Sanchez, he and I were having a conversation, and he ended up ditching me halfway through the conversation. He's like, Mike, I got to get in this line, or I'm not going to make it back. And I was like, God bless you, Pete.
Sounds like Pete.
That's our man.
He's our Talking Saints award-winning podcaster, so it doesn't surprise me that he'd be in confession. But, Pete did a really great job of, I think, capturing the day, and you as well did. I can't speak. As you did as well, because you took the photos.
I did.
So in the most recent issue of the Catholic Star Herald, there is a large story and tons of photos from Man Up. So I encourage everybody to read the article. I too was, I was moved by some of the stories I heard, especially how many
different photos.
I was very moved by the photos.
Okay,
there was such emotion in the photos, as if I had never seen before.
That's right.
Yeah. But what I like to see from the coverage, both photos and article, was the different generations. Like I saw, and even in the article, it's caught. Like it was like two brothers brought a third brother for the first time, or there was like a grandfather, a father, and a grandson. Is that something that you experienced as well? Just looking around. Yeah,
it's it's always going to lean a little bit to older folks, but actually there's a great diversity of ages. There's also a great diversity of people there too. There's an enormous contingent of Latinos that were there, quite a few African American gentlemen, a couple of Asian Americans over there. I have to say they've done a good job, and that was something that they were really focused on, was making sure that everybody felt encouraged and supported to come to Man Up South Jersey. It was really nice.
Well, again, I've already said, I think I mentioned it once, but one of the things that I liked about this year's Man Up, even before it happened, but just reading who the speakers were going to be, is that there would be some of military there on Veterans Day, which I thought was very appropriate and moving.
Yeah, I have to give Deacon Anthony Seo, the chairperson of the committee, as soon as he saw how the dates were going to line up, he made that an imperative, and I think he pulled it off. Yeah, the chaplain of the Navy. Oh boy, that boy knows how to hold a person's attention. Yeah. The Major General did great too. He was actually interesting. It was the chaplain spoke from the stage and really knew how to command the stage, whereas the Major General he went down on the ground and kind of walked amongst the people. It was two completely different kind of presentations, and I actually think it really worked.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was nice.
Well, that is something that we can talk to our guests about today, because it's all veterans related, and so yeah,
that's nice. We're down here to talk about something that I didn't know existed until maybe 2 years ago.
And why don't you tell everybody where we are? Because you said it was the first time that we'd ever recorded, or you personally had ever recorded.
I'm trying to remember, but I believe this is the first time we've ever recorded a podcast outside the sanctuary of a church. This is, I'm looking to my left now and seeing the tabernacle, and I've already proven that I can be just as sarcastic in front of the tabernacle, but I was worried I was going to be, no, it's fine. Jesus.
Well, I sat myself so that I could look directly at it, so that, if I feel that this is going askew, I can look over at you and just say, give a nod over in that direction.
Oh, I see where this is going. Okay. I'll be on my behavior because of where we are?
Yeah.
All right. I hear what you're saying.
I don't know about that. But.
All right. Listen, let's see if our presence can help you introduce people without messing up their names.
I doubt that.
Okay.
But I will try. Okay. So as Mike said, we are at St. Mary's in Bridgeton. And today that we are visiting with members of the Catholic War Veterans Post 1578. And who we have with us today is Father Matthew Weber. He is the pastor of Holy Cross Parish in Bridgeton, and he's also the chaplain of the Catholic War Veterans Post. Hi, Father.
Hello, Jen. Hello, Mike. Hello, everybody.
Father Weber is my former pastor, and one of my favorite priests, I might add.
Oh, then we're in good hands today.
We are.
We also have Deacon Charles Dillin. He is an Air Force veteran who serves in St. Charles Borromeo, Sicklerville. Hi.
How's everybody doing? It's great to be here with you.
We have Sam Pace. He is a New Jersey Air National Guard veteran. He served there for 21 years, and then he was activated for the Air Force after 9/11. Hi, Sam.
How you doing? And let me just make one correction. You're in Rosenhain, New Jersey.
That is true. Technically,
okay.
We are in the parish of Holy Cross, which encumbers a lot of Bridgeton,
right.
and I always think
you're in Rosenhain, New Jersey,
which is actually more important that we said that on the podcast, because no one ever pronounces Rosenhain correctly. So the fact that he said it meant that none of us could screw it up. So thank you for that, Sam.
To be honest, I have it written down, and I skipped it on purpose because I knew I would mispronounce it. We also have Albert Siedlecki.
Yes.
Yeah, he is a
Correct.
former Marine. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
And we have Steve Martin, who is a U.S. Navy veteran and who served in Vietnam. And we'll definitely be checking in with Steve, because he had some exciting news for Man Up as well. So welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
So, Father, we thought maybe we'd just start with you and get you to explain a little bit, if you could, about the Catholic War Veterans Post, when it started, and who it's for.
Well, the Catholic War Veterans Organization itself began in 1935 in Astoria, Queens, New York, by Monsignor Edward Higgins. He was a World War I veteran. So it was about 20 years after the war, and during the time of the Depression, he was inspired to begin an organization to bring Catholic veterans together. And I think the key about this organization is we want to celebrate our Catholic faith. The veterans are proud of their service, but we also want to grow in our faith, and we love our faith. And so that, I would say, would make us different from other veteran organizations. Regarding our particular post, this year we're celebrating our 75th anniversary.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, began in January of 1948. At that time, we've had quite a few veterans who came back from World War II, and so they decided to start a post here in Bridgeton. And it's grown over the years quite a bit, and we're very happy to be celebrating our 75th anniversary. One thing that's beautiful about our post is that we have veterans from as far back as World War II up into the 2020s.
Wow.
With our youngest being about 20, 21 years old, and she was our first female member.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so, and we do have another female member too, just joined this year. So it's, I was very happy to come here when I was assigned here to the parish in 2016. When I found out that there was a post here, I was extremely happy because my grandfather, a World War I veteran, was a post commander in South Philadelphia.
Wow.
And my mother used to talk about it from time to time, and she was, very proud of his service. And so I heard about it growing up. I knew about him, but I never had, I would say, met a Catholic War veteran until I came here to Bridgeton. And so immediately, I'm not a veteran, I'm a son of a veteran, but the Catholic War veterans also have an auxiliary. So I joined the auxiliary, and I was made a de facto chaplain. And I succeeded our beloved former chaplain who just passed away a few weeks ago, Deacon C.J. O'Shea. He was a Navy veteran, World War II. And he was the chaplain before I came. And so I've never been to Bridgeton before. Passed through Cumberland County. And so this was, I believe, was just, it was a godsend for me. And to find out, not only to find out more about the Catholic War veterans, but also to be a part of the group. And I'm not and I am honored to be their chaplain, very much so.
Now you already mentioned it, but there was a big celebration a couple of months ago for the 75th anniversary. I believe Bishop Coffey from the Archdiocese for Military Services was here.
Yes, yeah. He is the Bishop Protector of the Catholic War veterans, and a classmate of my brother, who's a priest too. My brother, Father Dennis Weber. They were classmates at St. Charles Seminary in Philadelphia. So I had an in, that's it, so to speak. And Bishop Coffey, we were trying to get him out. He was ready to come out just before COVID. Or actually, yes, we were contacting him just before COVID began, and then we had him set to come, but then COVID came along. So he finally did come, but at a most beautiful moment, being the main celebrant for our 75th anniversary Mass and celebration, our honored guest, main guest.
So we did an article about that in the Catholic Star Herald, and we sent Debbie Troy, one of our great freelancers. I think Debbie Troy tops out at about 5'3".
Oh, she's a tiny one, yes.
So then I see these pictures and I see Bishop Coffey, and I'm like, is he as tall as he looks, or is it just because Debbie is 5'3"? Because he looked like he was like 6'6" next to her.
Yeah, I think he's about what, 6'1", 6'2"?
Yeah, at least.
I would say that.
Towered over me.
He's a Navy veteran too. Mm-hmm. He's been in the service for many years. Now he's retired.
Wow.
So, but it's great to have. He was down to earth, right?
Yeah.
Sure was.
Very down to earth.
No, I'm going to hear that.
Well, Father, you've already kind of spoken about, the fact that it's a Catholic post. Gentlemen, how important was faith to you during your service? I'll start with, first off, it's very odd for me to use everybody's first names. 'Cause being around the military, I want to call you like Major or Commander. So, but can I call you by your first names? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, because I'm staring right at you, Albert, I'll start with you. How important was your faith in service when you were in the Marines?
Well, my faith has always been important to me. Before joining the Marine Corps back in 1981, I grew up as a young Catholic in a very strong Catholic family. So my faith was from day one. And when I went into the Marine Corps in 1981, I served to 1985, spent 4 years. It was very important to me to continue with my faith, especially being away, being deployed overseas. I didn't see any combat time, but just being away from the family, being overseas, being in harm's way, because it was just in the early 80s. We had the Beirut peacekeeping mission going on at the time. And things were a little uneasy after the Beirut bombing occurred in 1983. So my faith played a big part, keeping me kind of focused on what I was doing at the time, and since that point in my life, my faith has only gotten stronger, and naturally, becoming a member of the Catholic War Vets about 4 or 5 years ago, like Father said earlier, and we all, all the members, we grow in faith, and it's not just being a Catholic, we're also a veteran. We have a couple things in common, and we have a lot of things, and we share a lot of values in this organization together, and it sets us apart. Again, like what Father was saying earlier, from all other men's organizations, other veterans organizations, that we're Catholic, we're veterans, and with those two things, really makes this organization special.
Sam, what about you?
Well, I too have always been a practicing Catholic, and then I joined the military late in life. I was 27 when I joined, and I was 28 in tech school with a bunch of kids. And I was totally out of context with what was going on, and I was in the electronics field. So I had trouble one particular block, didn't do so well. I failed, and I was just totally bummed out, because here I was, I had done things and had failed. So I went and talked to the Catholic chaplain, and he was great. He was fantastic. And just the fact that I was able to throw some humor into it, was really helpful. He says, "You'll make it, don't worry about it." And sure enough, everything was okay.
It's funny. That makes me think of something Captain Mode said during Man Up. He's had this exact same thing, that as a chaplain, how he would work with people and sort of encourage them through. It was actually really lovely to hear, as a matter of fact. So
when you were talking about that, I was also thinking that when you're in the military, any branch of the armed services, there's always a chaplain, but is there always a Catholic chaplain? When you were serving, was there always a Catholic chaplain available?
At that particular base, there was a Catholic chaplain.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was in, it's now closed, but it was Lowry Air Force Base in Denver, Colorado.
Oh, okay.
We should probably mention, you have a bit of a connection to all of this, Jen. Your husband was what did he do in the military again? Remind me.
My husband served almost 30 years. He was multiple things, but toward the end, he was a chaplain's assistant. So he was downrange for a couple of years, and also deployed at 9/11 and all of the major hurricanes that hit New Jersey, Sandy, and all the others.
This is why Jen's asking all the questions, because she's far more intelligent about all this than I. My connections to the military are a little bit different.
But also, my grandfather served in World War II in the Pacific, but he unfortunately passed away when I was young. But he never really wanted to talk about it, though. So, is that? I mean, you kind of mentioned that, Father, that your grandmother was sharing stories, or
my mother.
Your mother.
My grandfather was a World War I veteran.
Right.
I remember, in fact, she told me this story once. My aunt would ask my grandfather, "Well, tell us about how was it in the war? How was it in France?" He was with the All-American, 82nd Infantry. It wasn't airborne infantry. There's no airborne at the time.
Yeah.
Wow.
But he would say this. He said, "Well, we can see, the only thing," he said, "I will tell you this, is only once I'll tell you. We could see the whites of their eyes, and they could see the whites of our eyes." Mm-hmm. That was it. Mm-hmm. And so it was hard for him to, I think, just talk about that. Mm-hmm. And but yeah, he did join, and I believe in it. I think it was a good place for him to be. Perhaps I'm just speculating. Mm-hmm. Good place for him to be with other fellow Catholics as well as veterans. and they probably had, it was a comfortable place for them, a safe place for them.
Yeah.
My grandfather was Lutheran, and he got his mother to sign off on the papers so he could go in early. And like I said, he was in the Seabees in the Pacific. But I know faith was important to him because he would write weekly letters back to the Lutheran pastor, and the pastor would read them out during services and print them in the bulletin. And I wish to goodness that we had those letters. Unfortunately, they put them in a dresser, and somehow the dresser got sold. But yeah, I wish that we could hear those stories. So, so Deacon Charlie, Charles. Okay. So tell us a little bit about your service and how long you served.
Well, I was in towards the end of the Vietnam era. In fact, I told this story, and this will be only the second time that I've told this story. I told it the first time this past Sunday during my homily, that I was on duty the day that we evacuated the embassy in Saigon. Mm-hmm. I was not in Saigon. I was not in Vietnam. I was actually in Thailand at a listening post that we had there, and our job was to provide updates on enemy troop movements, how close they were to the embassy, to let them know how much time they had left. And talking about spirituality, spiritually, I was okay, but emotionally, I was not prepared for that day. Yeah. For what happened, because it was a feeling of hopelessness for me. It was nothing that we could do to help, the people that were trying to get out. Like Al wasn't in combat, but those kind of feelings that I experienced that day were just as bothersome.
Of course.
But I was fortunate enough that the post that I was at, we did have a Catholic chaplain, so he helped me get through those 11 months that I spent there, which was difficult to begin with because I had just gotten married a month before I got shipped out. So, but it was great to have that support.
Yeah. I have to ask, you're a deacon now. How long have you been a deacon?
Just over 3 years.
Okay. I have noticed that a lot of our deacon corps comes from either military background or a law enforcement background. Have you found that there's psychologically you find some similarities between being a member of the clergy and being a soldier?
Well, I think it's the discipline between the two, because there is a discipline in being in the clergy. Father, I mean, you could agree or not, but I mean, as far as a deacon, I feel it through going through formation, as there is a discipline, of course, in the military that you experience, and you bring that discipline, and it helps me to have a better ministry, I believe.
That's a good way of thinking about it.
So.
Steve, we haven't heard from you yet, and I know I haven't directed any questions down your way, but...
Steve's famous now.
I know. He's going to be famous. He's already famous. So you were at Man Up this weekend.
Yes, I was.
And first off, tell us a little bit about where you served, and then and how you were serving at Man Up on Saturday.
Well, I joined the Navy in 1968. The draft was still very much active at that period of time, and I kind of chose the Navy, figuring that a ship at sea is like a city. You have to have all aspects of that to be able to sit out there. You can't call a taxi, or you can't call Uber, and you can't get Pizza Hut to deliver. So, there's all of that to go along with it, with the military aspect of the ships that they use. And so they, out of boot camp, they sent me to electrician's mate school. And while I was there, I was listening to some of the gentlemen that came back from the fleet, and were telling all their war stories about, being in high seas in the North Atlantic, and sometimes if you're on a carrier and the electricians were in the engineering group, so they would be down in the bilge areas and where all the machinery was at, and you might not see the sunlight for weeks on end because of either working the shifts or such and that. And so I started thinking about it and all. And so a few gentlemen came by with this nice video show that they had all put together. It was back in those days, it was like a 16 millimeter film that they used. And it showed a couple guys running around and just blowing some stuff up. And I said, well, that sounds a little interesting, you know. Forgot all about the fact that I was trying to take something home from this. But, and so I volunteered for what was known as EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal. They pre-qualified us. I qualified to start the course and learned how to scuba dive. And went from there. I went up to a chemical and biological warfare school at the McClellan down in McClellan, Fort McClellan, I guess we refer to it, Anniston, Alabama. And while we were there, we were nearing the end of our training there, and they got a call from Washington and said they needed some divers, qualified divers, to go and fill billets in the Mekong Delta area. So they grabbed 4 of us, and that's where they sent us. You know, so I ended up over there, and that was another part of why I joined versus letting the draft grab me, because I'd finished the semester of college, but I didn't have the bucks to do the next semester. So I would have lost my 1S deferment back then, and so I was started boot camp in '69. In either case, from there they shipped us over. And I spent a year in Vietnam diving in the rivers in the Mekong Delta area, and other things. And then at the end of that, I had applied for salvage diving school. Figured, well, you know, what are you going to do with scuba divers, you know, in the Navy? And so I, even though we were specialized, the salvage divers appealed to me. I said, well, you know, I can learn that too. They were willing to send me back to school, so I went. And when I finished that training, and they sent me to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, which was a nice duty. They put me on a submarine rescue vessel. We had the equipment to go down and rescue the submariners if they got stuck on the bottom somewhere and couldn't get their boat back to the surface. So that was very exciting doing that. And we made a Westpac cruise tour. And got to see a lot of different countries. I actually was doing some diving in Korea and Japan. We trained some divers for the Taiwan Navy while we were on our cruise. Managed to get down to Singapore and Hong Kong a couple of times, the Philippines, and even made a side trip down to Brisbane, Australia, before we got back. You know, ended up going back to the home port in Pearl Harbor. So it was a very exciting time. But. Wow. Come to the end of my 4-year enlistment, I decided that, you know, this wasn't quite what I was thinking about, and so I wanted to go home, spend more time on land and around the family. My family was on the East Coast, and I was on the West Coast, and we did move around a little bit when I was younger because both my parents were participants in they were in the Army. My mom outranked Dad, which was kind of unique. Yeah. She was a second lieutenant, and he was a sergeant in the Army, and he was with the Corps of Engineers during World War II, and he went through the Pacific building airfields for the Army Air Corps and the Marine pilots that were stationed on the islands as they were trying to take them over. So, but I had never heard about anything about a Catholic war veterans group. So when I came home from the service, I didn't want to join the American Legion or the Veterans of Foreign Wars or anything, you know, because it just didn't appeal to me, because I think it was a lot of guys. I thought it was a lot of guys sitting around crying in their beer, to put it bluntly. But because you know, they spent more time doing that, I thought, at their posts, from what I knew of them, and didn't realize all the programs that they support throughout the veterans group. And well, since then, of course, I've joined the American Legion, but I wasn't very active in the local post in Williamstown. But not hearing of the Catholic War veterans was one of the things, because Mom and Dad were pretty staunch Catholics, and everywhere we moved to, they were always sending us to the either Catholic school or to the religious education classes and everything. So it was pretty instilled in us and everything. And I have to admit, though, that during the time in country, it was very testy, and there weren't always chaplains around or anywhere to deal with it. So it kind of fell away from me a little bit. But when I was on the ship, I started, and we didn't have it. We were small enough that we didn't have a chaplain with that either. But I managed to grab a bunch of books about some of the other religions. I was a little curious, And I studied about things like Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Shintoism, a few of the other isms that are out there and all. And but the Catholicism was stuck in my heart, So when I came home and finally got around to marrying a girl, she was definitely a Catholic, and that was what I was looking for, a good Catholic woman to straighten me out.
Did she outrank you?
No, she was a total civilian. None of her brothers and family served in the service and all, so. And the kids call me, I'm a drill sergeant, And when I said, "Oh no, I was never a drill sergeant, guys," because I wasn't a sergeant never,
Yeah.
But I was a little tough on them when growing up. So,
Father Weber, listening to the guys talk, and Jen and her husband, and what I know about the military from my family connections. You said you didn't serve, but that's not entirely true. You spent quite a bit of time outside the United States in a different form of service. So I have to imagine some of this sounds familiar to you.
Well, it does. I spent 11 years overseas, and like the military, you're kind of, well, here are your orders. We need you there. And literally, my first time overseas was to Italy, and there was a prep for that, because I was to go on for theology.
Yeah.
I was there. I was ordained a deacon, by the way, by a cardinal who I just heard will be beatified.
Oh wow, really?
Cardinal Eduardo Pironio from Argentina.
Oh, yeah.
He was in Rome at the time, so he'll be beatified next month. So there was some prep for that, but I remember my first year or so, homesickness played a big part. I was pretty much the only American there, and waiting for those care packages was always something very special, very special. Mm-hmm. Going over further, when I was just told you had to go to the Philippines, I did 3 tours there. Wasn't prepared for it, and it was a culture shock too. I imagine the ones who've been in the service, when you go to other countries, you're not in the U.S.
Yeah.
You have to adapt to a different culture, language, lifestyle, and so on. And so that was a big part. It was at the time when I first went to the Philippines in 1991. Unlike the military, we didn't have any telephone, we didn't have a TV, we had a radio. The mail will only come once a week, maybe like the military, you get the mail once a week or whatever it was. So you always waited for the mail and all, but you're sent to where you are needed most. And at times it was in moments of crisis, particularly in the Philippines. It was not unusual that we would go through a typhoon.
Yeah.
And then you had to you had to help people. We had to literally, I remember we were shipping supplies when I first went to the Philippines in '91. That was at the time was Mount Pinatubo erupted in June of '91. It was a massive eruption. And so I arrived a month later, and we were transporting all kinds of supplies, everything, utensils, food, blankets, so on and so forth, to the people who were living there, because many of them lost their homes, lost everything. And so we would go and meet the people in the evacuation center and bring them supplies. We celebrated Mass for them, and we did that continuously for a while. And I did the same thing too in 2006. when there was another terrible typhoon, which many people died, and we were sending supplies there too, because the city where our community was literally wiped out. So in that sense, yeah, it's kind of...
Yeah. It's I can imagine it feels very similar, and I'm sure you have an interesting perspective. So let's talk a little bit about the post, this particular post in general. So, tell us about like, how often do you meet? Like, what does the post do for its members?
We meet once a week. Let me say something about the post. This is like the best kept secret in America, really.
Well, we're trying to fix that.
We're over here. Our post is 1578 in Bridgeton. I knew there was a Catholic War Vet group. 2012. I had been a member of the parish since 2008. So I found out we had a group, and then Father had mentioned in the beginning. He had mentioned we had 5 active World War II veteran members at the time, and another 2 or 3 that would come off and on. And I was 58 at the time, and I was the kid. And then Al came in 3-4 years later. He became the kid in his 50s. But we're trying to help out other veteran organizations. We try to help out the church. Probably our biggest contribution is to the Vineland Memorial Veterans Home. Mm-hmm. We go over there, we give them money. It's important to us. Father says Mass there once a week. A bunch of us go there for Mass. In fact, a quick story. Last week, Father went. One of our members went there, Joe Nicosia, and sang "God Bless America." And one of the members who actually knew Joe broke down and cried, and he was touched by Joe's singing. So we go to the Veterans Home. We had a Memorial Day Mass here in Rosenhain, St. Mary's Cemetery. We had a meeting. Al and several members brought it up. Hey, we didn't have a flagpole. One of our members went home and got a flag. The flag was blown all over the place. So this year, we wound up getting a flagpole. Al started looking for some flagpoles, and the costs were phenomenal. We wound up with our members, a bunch of guys got together. One of the members went to a business of an old fire company. We got one of the flagpole and everything from their old fire company, who was now a business. We had another business dig it out of the ground. We had another business come tow it. It was unbelievable. Everybody just worked together. So St. Mary's Cemetery in Rosenhain has this $6,000-$7,000 flagpole now through the efforts of all the members of our post. That was probably the greatest accomplishment we've had so far.
That's beautiful.
And the nice thing is when you ride by there at night, it absolutely looks beautiful.
Really?
Like to add, the Catholic War Vets, we also work with other groups, and particularly in our parish, we work with the Knights of Columbus. There's the twice a year blood drive, which both groups organize, and we just had it. And so we're willing to work with other groups within the parish to help out. It could be even, for example, the annual barbecue chicken, day, so I think it brings us together with, if we want to, we can work on common projects within the parish, or maybe go on a men's retreat, or it doesn't have to be men's retreat, just go on retreat. For example, with the Men of Malvern, we have a Men of Malvern group in our parish, and so I think that's important also.
Can I add a little bit there, Father? Like you said, we work together with other groups. One of the things, and we're very charitable when we can. We raise money and donate, like Sam said, to the Veterans Home. We also donate money to other veterans groups in the area. But charity does start at home within the Catholic War Vets. We do things for our members who are in need. Veterans, the World War II veterans. This past year, we built a ramp for one of World War II veterans. He couldn't get out of his house. We also built, two ramps for World War II veterans, and one for a veteran, I believe he was in the Korean War or the Vietnam War. We get together. Again, some nights jumped in along with us, and a group of guys went over to their homes, constructed ramps so the gentlemen were able to get out of their homes safely. So it makes us feel good, probably better than the people we're trying to help out.
There's a common theme, obviously of camaraderie, right? How important is the post for veterans to talk about things that only you guys can understand, and gals that can understand, or maybe a sudden separation from military? I mean, do you find that you lean on each other in moments like that?
Since I've been here, we have quite a few parishioners who have entered the military, have gone in, and so we try to be there for them, those who are in active service right now, and maybe even deployed, so we might send them letters and so on. But I've noticed when they come out, and a couple of our, definitely, I have in mind one young member, when he got out, he felt lost when he separated. He felt lost, and he landed with our group, and we're talking about a young man in his 20s right now. So I think when they come to that point of separation, and they're looking for something. They're trying to land somewhere and somehow in society, and that's not easy.
Right.
So I've noticed that I'm not sure if you noticed that, fellas, with our younger members, if you've noticed that or not. At least the ones who've just gotten out.
Yeah.
I would agree with that, Father, and I think it's important for us to try to make them more aware that the group even exists, because I've only been a member of the post for about a year now, and I found out about it through Steve. We never knew the organization existed. It's been around for 75 years, but we've never heard of it.
Right.
And thanks to you, giving us some additional publicity on it, hopefully our numbers will increase. We're actually trying to get another post started, in the diocese, maybe a little closer to where Steve and I are, because we come down from the Williamstown and Atco area. We come down for the meetings once a month, and it's really making them aware that we are here, because the younger ones, they really do need to make that connection.
Right.
The suicide rate for veterans is astronomical, and I think it's because they just don't know where to turn. They don't have an organization to support them, and unless they're fortunate enough to hear of this organization, and they find a place where they can come and pour out their hearts and be filled spiritually and have that camaraderie that you mentioned. It's important to them, and it's important for us.
So right now, this is the only post in the diocese, correct? And so, Father, have you been pulling from all over South Jersey?
Well,
would you say?
So mainly from Camden County, Gloucester County,
Atlantic and Cape May.
Atlantic, just about all of our counties, and perhaps even Salem too. So we're pulling from different areas. I believe in our diocese there was at a certain point there might have been other posts. I think there was maybe one in Vineland at one time. But it's my goal is that we will not be the last post or the only post.
Absolutely.
And so as Deacon Charlie's bringing out, and Steve Martin here is working with him, we need to give birth to other posts, one at a time.
Yeah, what got me involved with it was an advertisement back in the Star Herald back in 2019, even let me become aware that there was a Catholic war organization, veterans organization. And so I chose the Bridgeton Post to join because I wanted to find out what it was all about. And in that research, I started thinking, well, we're up in Camden County, and I am, and Charlie's, and we're like right next to neighbors, right at the county lines. But Williamstown's in Gloucester County, and Winslow is in Camden County. But in either case, I says it is a little bit of a hike to come down here. So when I researched it on headquarters' website, I noticed that the nearest one to where I live was up in either Bridgeton or Mercer County in Trenton. And I figured, well, I know a few people because I've worked down here at the nuclear plant, and I was in construction for a while, so I moved around a lot. And I also worked for a company out of the Trenton area, and I said, I'd like the guys down this way better. I'm sorry, Trenton, you lose.
I got news for you. That's a theme of this podcast.
Yeah, it is.
So,
oh boy.
Yep.
I stole her from Trenton, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
We could talk about that off there.
So in my research, I got a chance to find out, and I was checking into, because if I was going to try and sell the idea to my fellow parishioners and all, I needed to give them something to go with. So I started diving into the headquarters documents and everything like that. And I found out that at one time there was over 15 posts within the Camden Diocese area.
Wow.
So this is the last man standing here. And
sounds,
kind of scary for both of us,
We're
for
not
Father
gonna
and
go
myself.
down.
Yeah, we're not going down without a fight.
Well, not only that, Father Weber already mentioned the fact that there's an auxiliary to this,
Yes,
and I would like you to consider bringing Jen in as an auxiliary member to help with your marketing and promotion, because with her connections to the military and her connections to the rest of the diocese, she'd have this place doubled or tripled in no time. So you're welcome to have her anytime you want, Father.
Voluntold yet again. Though I am very passionate about that. Please, Sam, go ahead.
When Father mentioned about putting the ad in the Star Herald, a bunch of us thought, oh my God, what's going on here? But he said, maybe we'll get a few members. We wound up getting, like Steve, 5-6 members from other parishes have joined us. Every county, Cape May and Atlantic, and they're talking. We haven't met any of those members, but I've talked to some of them, and they would maybe like to look into getting a post. And then with people like Steve being as active as he was, hooked up with Charlie, we have several members from his area. So we have, I think right now, ballpark figures, I'm going to say 9 or 10 from other parishes on our.
And even two priests from the diocese.
Oh, really?
Have joined. They were veterans. Father Jim Betts and Father John March.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yep, them too.
Now, they can't make it to the meetings, but we'll at least hope to get together for Christmas time for a Christmas dinner, an annual Christmas dinner. One other thing that's extremely important is you need not be a combat veteran to be, or a veteran in a conflict at one time, even though it's Catholic war veterans. It's open to all veterans, been honorably discharged, Catholic faith, who who are proud of their service and who want to grow in their faith.
And I just want to harp on that. Maybe Mike was right about saying, you can
just end it there. Mike was
use
right.
Jen to help you. But, as the spouse of a military member, not the person who's in the military, but when you meet somebody else from the military, do you feel, at least this is what I see, you immediately know you have a shared experience, right? Absolutely. Like you said, whether you were in combat or not, there's a shared experience of that. And I think that's why, the post is so important, because only veterans can talk to veterans and really understand. And now you also have the benefit of being Catholic and a veteran and can really understand.
Correct.
Yeah.
When are we going to get your husband to join this post?
He would have to drive all the way from Ocean County.
Comes down to
that's where we're at.
That's
but he
fine.
would, because, and Deacon, I know we only have a few more minutes, but maybe you can talk to this. I know that there is a high rate of suicide among veterans who are returning and maybe don't know that there's help out there. Is that something that you've heard as well?
In fact, we were talking about that before you came in.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, when you came in the door, and we were talking about the high rate of veterans. It's like 20 a day. suicides. It's a phenomenal number that even if it was one a day is still too many.
Right.
It's like,
of all ages?
Stealing your words.
As young well, I assume with different ages, yes. Perhaps even many years after service.
Sure.
But I know, I'm definitely sure of 2 of our parishioners who just got out of service. 7 members they were from 2 separate units, the same service, but 7 members had committed suicide. And this we're talking about, they just only served recently.
Yeah.
Wow.
They were in their 20s, and so it's definitely it's a tragedy that needs to be highlighted and addressed, and perhaps this group, not only the Catholic War veterans themselves, but anyone who belongs to the auxiliary, can be there as a support too, and so we just need to be. I would say, as a priest, it's perhaps easier for me, but I think all of us, and I said it might be easier for me because I'm a leader within the parish. But I believe we know we have neighbors, maybe family members who are coming back from the service. We should just reach out to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We need to make it a point just to, not only say welcome back, but from time to time, just especially those who are veterans, to reach out to them and say, how are you doing?
Yeah, that's a great point. In this day and age, we've seen a lot of reports about this, about how the nature of culture now, which is so siloed, everybody's on there, particularly amongst younger people. They're on their iPads, they're playing video games, but they're not actually around people for real. Being able to be close to someone, actually sit with someone, talk to someone, look somebody in the eyes, that really does make an enormous difference. It's certainly something, Father, that and certainly Deacon as well, that as clergymen, that the difference between someone not coming to church and someone who comes to church, you have an entire community here to look after you. So obviously, Jen, this means we need to do a better job of promoting this post, and I look forward to all the work you're going to do on that. I'll support you in any way I can.
Thank you.
No problem.
But I think listening. Would you all agree that just sometimes listening is the best thing you can do for a fellow veteran?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing I've come across is that it's easy to listen because we're eager to help our fellow veterans, but it's hard for them to talk.
Right. True.
And you really have to kind of create the atmosphere, and that they're willing to. All the organizations out there, the VSOs, the Veteran Service Organizations, make efforts to resolve this issue with the suicides. And they're not approaching it from the spiritual level, and I think that's where we've got a hands up on them. Mm-hmm. And if we can just get that message out there, that turn back to God and our Creator in Christ, and give them that spiritual and that's the emotional side of all of this. And the guys that are suffering from PTSD and whatnot, they get up against the wall and they think that there's nowhere to turn. They've already been involved in a violent activity for a while, so to them, it's not worth it anymore to go. So they just grab their whatever they do and they end their life here, but they don't realize the impact that they're going to have on their next life. Yeah. If they could learn to relate to that and know that the Lord is there with them to walk with them and help them through. It's like the old saying that you hear so often about, as I noticed the Lord was with me and I was talking to him and there was 2 sets of footprints in the sand. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden there's only one, and this guy, the person telling the story, and he gets back and he says, well, where'd you go, Lord, when I needed you most? And he says, well, that's when I was carrying you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like a good theme to approach a lot of this with, and remind those guys that are on the verge and being distraught and think they've lost it all. It's that we need to be there for them. And I don't think you get that same approach from these other VSOs. I've dealt with some of the counselors for the VA and all, and it's just not there. Yeah. It's not like what we want to present to them.
Well, gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for joining us. Father Weber, thank you. Al, Deacon Charlie, Sam, and Steve, thank you all for your service and all the ways you serve. And everybody, check out Talking Catholic next week.